Smart people learn from their mistakes, but wise people they learn from other people's mistakes. And so, in that spirit, today I want to share the most important lessons that I have learned during this year, interviewing over 50 founders and listening to their stories, their what I call rock bottom stories. The wisdom that I've gathered in those conversations, I think, is profound, and I thought it was really be worth to share that because, as we all know, we learn the biggest lessons when shit hits the fan. It's not when we collect wins or when we are successful, but it's when it really hurts. And so all of these founders have had their fair share of pain and struggle and hardship. All of them men who tried to become successful but failed because of their own mistakes, almost always self-inflicted. And so that is why I think the value of these conversations is so great. And I distilled and extracted the most important lessons for you in this video. I want to say thank you for being here, listening to me, and being part of the Nomad CEO podcast. Okay, let's just dive into it right away. Number one, sometimes the most important thing in life isn't failure, but success that keeps rewarding a path you already know is wrong. This was a quote from John Graham Harper, and he was talking about staying in a business model and leadership role that looked successful from the outside, but had already lost personal meaning and alignment, which he ignored because results kept coming in. Okay, and this is something you might have experienced as well in your life. It's when something that you've been doing is getting you results in form of money or in form of some emotional reward, but deep down you already know that that path already has ended, but you keep pushing it, you keep doing it. And it's something that is deeply rooted in self-awareness or the lack thereof. And so it requires more than just knowledge. It requires a connection with your inner self and with your purpose and what you're supposed to do in this world, right? So it doesn't show up overnight. It sometimes takes a while, but when it's there, you should take action. That's the lesson here. Or we often confuse this with a superficial business goal, when in reality, it's about alignment and inner purpose. Number two, rock bottom often begins long before the collapse. At the moment you keep postponing a decision you already know you have to make. This one comes from Lewis Huckstep, one of the first podcast guests or big podcast guests I've had in the past. He referred to delaying a hard personal and professional decision he felt clearly but avoided, stretching out the pain until it forced itself through collapse, right? The key word here is avoidance. It's similar to the first one. It's about not paying attention, right? It's about postponing the important decisions because it's often the case that we confuse urgent with important. Those are very different predicaments, right? So urgent does not mean important. Sometimes it's both. Sometimes you have an important decision and urgent decision to make, but most of the time they're just important, but we keep pushing them further down the line. And that's risky because at some point it's just not possible to do that anymore. And then collapse is around the corner. Okay, number three. This one is from Richard Walsh. And he said, losing everything doesn't destroy you nearly as much as losing trust in your own judgment. He was describing the period after his financial collapse when the hardest part wasn't money loss, but doubting every decision he made afterward. And this is so true. I can feel it resonates with every fiber of my being because same here. When I lost my company, it wasn't about the money. It wasn't even about the people either, because people also, when you lose people, when you lose your shit, people also walk away from you, which is hard and it's painful. But the real damage is actually when you doubt yourself in the aftermath and you think you're not capable of getting up again, because it feels like death. It really does. When you're stripped of your identity, that's the hardest part of. And I've seen this playing out over and over again in those conversations, and it was a relief because I realized it's not just me who felt that way, and I think it's something that hits men the most because we're so tied to our identity, the status we portray into the world, that we're stripped of our self-worth. It's not real self-worth, it's our perceived self-worth. And so it's death. And that's the hardest part. Number 4, the real breaking point isn't when you lose money, but when you finally accept that fighting reality costs more than surrendering to it. This is different. It sounds similar, but it's different. This is from a guest called, his name was Roy Coughlin from Ireland. He was referring to years spent fighting legal systems and outcomes until he realized resistance itself was draining his life more than the loss. This is about radical acceptance. Sometimes we need to step back and realize that we cannot fight reality and it's an illusion, and we need to accept things as they are and then move on. How does that play out? Often it's just yesterday I had a conversation about the sunk cost fallacy. When you not realize that you're fighting for a lost cause, because this is conflicting with the other side of things when you're basically being taught all the time through motivational videos that you need to keep pushing, you need to keep going, and only losers give up. That is true sometimes, but just not all the time. So sometimes reality is just reality, and we need to be able to discern from fiction. And if we don't, we pay the consequences. The next one is about fear. This is from an author and the ex-CEO of 7-Eleven. And in his book, he said, and on my podcast, he said, fear is rarely about circumstances or competition. It's about how fast you're willing to learn when the world gets louder. He meant moments of crisis where leaders freeze, not because of external pressure, but because they stop learning when pressure increases. So your ability to learn, adapt, and move on is often tied to fear that makes you freeze, and you're not able to move and to quickly adapt to the situation. This is a tough one because when pressure actually increases and you know your life is on the line, it's hard to become that person, right? So we often freeze because fear has that grip on us and we are unable to unfreeze, right? So a lot of self introspection and self awareness is required here as well. Nothing you can learn by just reading it. This is something we only can get through experience, I believe. Number 6, facing death has a way of stripping away the illusion of unlimited time and forcing you to live every decision actually matters. Okay. This is David Capablanca, also a recent podcast, and he was diagnosed with cancer. And so he was referring directly to his life-threatening medical diagnosis and how it instantly collapsed long-term illusions and it forced radical prioritization. What that means is that it strips away the unnecessary clutter. It strips away the stuff that really does not matter, that has not much meaning, that we cling on to. But when faced with such an enormous amount of reality check, it loosens its grip and we'd only prioritize what actually matters. So the question now becomes, can we see these situations? Can we strip away the meaningless stuff even if we don't have a life-threatening situation. Is that possible? I think it is, but we have to be radical we have to apply what's called radical honesty. Number 7, identity can become a prison when the version of yourself that pays the bills slowly destroys the person you are. Note how this is also a different perspective, but it's part of what I've said at the beginning. It's a similar lesson. It's when you're ignoring the path you're meant to go, but there's income paying, rewarding you for the wrong path, and you keep going that wrong path because money is coming in. And this is from Jaguar Hart, the Australian Andrew Tate. He was talking about maintaining a profitable public persona that no longer matches his values and was psychologically corrosive. Okay, so because our inner value, they are not fixed. We change. We learn new stuff. We become different persons over our lifetime. And the more we take in, the more we learn, the more our values can and should change, especially in the face of difficult moments, because then we have crucial new information, and that does change our values. In my case, I always despised a very important part of myself, which was my ability or my desire to do things independently, to go out into the world, to new things, and risk taking. This was a rebellious act because my father was the opposite, and so I hated that. Now I accept it, and it became my personal strength, I guess. And so you don't want to become prison in your own identity. You want to let go of those identities that no longer serve you. That was the lesson here. Number 8, ambition without brotherhood creates a lonely kind of success that eventually collapses under its own weight. This is from Travis Brady, and he referred to building external success while neglecting male friendship and community, which left him isolated at his lowest point. So this is also very true. I am in this situation right now. You look at the back, I'm in a hotel room in Vietnam. I'm probably gonna be alone this Christmas and New Year because I was focusing in the last year rebuilding my life alone. Why? Because first of all, I think men, we don't have a lot of friends as the older we get. Maybe some of us do. I don't. I had to let go of many of those, and now I should be seeking for more brotherhood, more friends. That's what I should do right now, because loneliness or being alone long term is not good for you. It isn't. Number 9, most suffering doesn't come from failure, but from chasing goals that impress others while emptying you inside. That is from Alan Lazarus, great guy, podcaster, and he was reflecting on achieving external success while feeling internally hollow, realizing his goals were ego-driven rather than value-driven. And this is something we all do because, especially as men, we are status aware. We want to become higher status and we want to do this and that. We want to attract more females. And so we neglect what's actually true for ourselves, our meaning, our inner goals. This alignment, again, you see this alignment is off. And so when we get older, we get wiser, and we can see things as they are, and then we just don't prioritize these meaningless external goals, and we become hopefully better with our judgment and what's good for us and what isn't. Okay. Number 10, in the end, business is never really about money. It's about people, loyalty, and who you choose to stand with when things fall apart. Truth bomb here. It's never about money. It isn't. Even if you set money as your goal, you're ultimately not doing it for the money. Even if you think you are, it's about the people you help with your business, not anything else. Nick Balu had a wild story. He's a guy who I interviewed right after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and we were very much aligned with our stances on a lot of things. He was referring to his early life experiences and later business decisions where trust and loyalty mattered more than any financial outcome. And we know this is true once we are in business for a while. Number 11, growth often stalls not because of the market, but because letting go of control feels scarier than staying small. Eric Brodman from the US, he has a prestigious law firm, and he meant his reluctance to delegate and share ownership, which capped his company's growth until he released control. He's now stepped away as a CEO. And then this is a common thing among entrepreneurs and founders because it's our baby. And so we want to protect the baby. We want to do things, and we don't want to let go of important processes. And instead of delegating to the right people and trusting those people, we hold on, and then that often limits our growth and the company's goals. Number 12, hard work only matters if it eventually earns you the right to work smarter. Otherwise, effort just resets the struggle every month. This is from Justin Freistadt, great guy, entrepreneur. And he was talking about grinding in business where effort didn't compound, forcing him to redesign his work so leverage replaced repetition. This is about being smarter, do less repetitive work, implementing leverage and systems, which should be your focus once you have identified where value is being created and you know the process in your mind. You need to automate, you need to delegate, you need to implement systems. Otherwise, you're going to be struggling, you're going to be working and not being really productive. Hard lesson. Number 13, most people aren't held back by lack of opportunity, but by an unwillingness to face rejection often enough to earn momentum. So this is from Todd Falcone, and he is one of the most successful MLM salesmen out there. He trains companies how to implement their systems. He referred to sales and life patterns where people avoid rejection, mistaking comfort for strategy, right? So what he's really saying here is that if you're early on, if you're in a new business, you should be facing rejection. Getting more rejection should be your first priority. The more, the better. This is true for women getting out dating, as it is for business, making money, getting sales. You need to be rejected more often, faster, and the more, the better. That's really what he's saying here, and it's true. You need to grow some thicker skin, and then you just don't care that much anymore. Very, very important lesson for the younger guys out there. Number 14, real success begins when you stop numbing yourself with productivity and start taking responsibility for your emotional life. Joshua Feynman, he's a men's coach from the UK. Very, very inspiring personality. I had a great podcast. He was speaking about overworking as a way to avoid emotional accountability until it nearly cost him his marriage and health, right? So we hide in being busy so that we don't have to confront the emotional baggage we're holding on to that we should let go of, and we just don't. And so we do that as men a lot. And this is a very male behavior. And so since he's teaching men to do better, well, that was his own rock bottom moment, and it's important to share that. Number 15, what looks like a random detour can quietly become the defining break of your life if you stay open long enough to follow it. This is from John Drummond, and he has also a very inspiring life. American, ended up in China, Taiwan, and now he's in Bali, where he's building a huge project, $1 billion project. So he referred to an unexpected personal setback that redirected him geographically and professionally into his most meaningful work. What he's really referring to is that sometimes life is mysterious, right? So things just happen, and then you might end up meeting a person you never expected, or a job opportunity you didn't expect to show up, or just about anything. And you should be open to these things. Sometimes, yeah, life is mysterious and things happen and you not necessarily plan for it, but having an open mind allows you to seize these opportunities, not being close-minded, and follow your heart. Number 16, a health crisis can become a turning point when you stop fighting your body and start treating symptoms as information, which it really is. This is from Brian Hardy. He was diagnosed with a rare illness from early on in his childhood. He was talking about a chronic illness, forcing him to listen to his body instead of overriding it with willpower, right? So your body is the most important machine you'll ever operate, obviously, because if it breaks down, you're fucked. And so he was forced to really pay attention because he had this condition and he needed to adapt and he needed to become healthy again. And so he learned to listen closely to his body. And now he teaches men to do that as well. So valuable and great advice. He's from Canada. I really encourage you to check out his number 17. When everything collapses publicly, the fastest way forward is to turn truth into strategy instead of hiding from it. This is from Remso Martinez. He's got a crazy story. He was working in Parler when 2016, when they came after Donald Trump after the election. He was in the midst of this political crime story, and he referred to navigating his public controversy by embracing transparency and aligning business decisions with reality instead of denial, right? So he had to walk away from the line of fire, so to speak. And that podcast was wild. You should actually go and watch it. It sounds like a crime story, because he was at the forefront of this Donald Trump controversy and censorship around his first presidency. And so so they shut down the platform Parler, and that was like this Twitter competitor back then. Great guy. He has also a marketing firm, and I really enjoyed that one. I was like, wow, this is what a story. And I was really honored to have him on my show. Number 18, choosing to be a creator instead of a consumer can change the entire trajectory of your life, even if you start with nothing. Klensky Inagas, a guy from Venezuela, young guy, maybe 20 years old, some really cool insights here from him. Big on Instagram. He meant that deliberately rejecting passive consumption in favor of disciplined creation despite limited resources and background. You don't need to be rich to become self-aware enough to focus on the things that matter, which is you bringing value to the people, to the world. You don't need to be a consumer rather than a creator. Being a creator on those, especially social media platforms, is way more rewarding than just consume that shit, right? So that was a big one from Glensky. Number 19, sometimes all it takes to change the direction of a life is one person who sees potential in you before you see it yourself. This is from Jordiano Caretta, a sales guy. He was referring to a single mentor-like moment where external belief catalyzed internal confidence. Sometimes other people around you believe more in you than you yourself do. And to him, this was a big moment. I think he was fighting a substance abuse addiction and letting himself down by wasting time on those substances and drugs, and there was a mentor who helped him. And this is a big one, I think, because we also always underestimate the importance of having the right mentors in our life. You can shortcut your learning process by choosing the right mentors early on, and it's often underestimated because we also tend to want to do things by ourselves, which is not a good idea. There's always someone who's ahead of you, and if you want to become better at whatever it is, you just have to choose someone you want to be inspired by and follow their footprints. And I'm not saying copying, but listening to the right voices is fundamental. So it's the easiest way to snap out of a stagnant life is to listen to the right people, surround yourself by people that actually are better than you. And now, last but not least, the most dangerous ego isn't the loud one at work, but the silent one you bring home and refuse to question. Here I learned a ton because this is a guy who actually was able to spend most of his life in a relationship, his marriage. And most guys I've interviewed in the past, they don't. Most men are just, especially founders. I don't know why, but this is a pattern I've seen over and over again. Mostly single, often in a shorter relationship. Maybe maybe I'm wrong, but he actually was able to identify his ego in that relationship, and then he was able to pinpoint how that spilled into his family life, and it nearly destroyed his relationship. So this is something I learned from him, but I was not fully capable of grasping. Maybe you do. Maybe this is something that has happened to you in the past. I hope this was helpful. Those were the big lessons this year of 2025. I wish you all Merry Christmas and a happy, prosperous 2026. I am going to keep going here with my podcast and with Founder Scale, my company. I hope to see you around, and thank you so much for listening. Happy 2026. Bye bye.